Good evening and welcome to New Space Chicago. I appreciate seeing all of you here this evening. New Space Chicago is an open community of professionals, experts, and entrepreneurs and other people who are interested in building space-related companies in Chicago. We believe that Chicago is well positioned to become a player in the growing space industry, particularly the commercial space industry. And our mission is to encourage startups in the space industry and in particular here in Chicago. So I'm really happy to see all of you coming out this evening. Let me ask you first of all, do we have any rocket scientists in the audience? Not you. Great. I'm not a rocket scientist either. I'm actually an electrical engineer. But I'm also a technology entrepreneur, and I have been excited about space since I was very young. And so I'm really happy to have the opportunity to build a space company in Chicago. So let me ask you this. How many of you are technology entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs of any type? That's awesome. I love to see that, and I'm glad you're all here. And I hope you're thinking about ideas for creating space companies. So we have a really great speaker tonight, but before I introduce our speaker, I have a couple of announcements. First of all, if you have not found the bathrooms, they're back that way, just this side of the big mural. So they're quite easy to find. Secondly, I would like to give a shout out to our sponsors. Our sponsors, first of all, M-Hub. I know many of you took the tour that Jacob was giving. M-Hub is providing us the space this evening, and we're very grateful for them to do that. Let me give, okay. Jacob already gave you the spiel. So M-Hub is a manufacturing innovation center and a startup incubator with an amazing collection of tools and access to capabilities for creating things, which coincidentally are also quite useful for building satellites and other space-related technologies. Our second sponsor tonight is Metropolitan Brewing. They are a local Chicago brewery, craft brewery, and they have provided our beer for us this evening. So thanks to Metropolitan Brewing. By the way, did anybody see the test firing of the Falcon Heavy spacecraft yesterday? So this is an amazing thing. We're about to have the most powerful rocket currently available for launch relatively soon. So that's yet another boost to the commercial space industry. So let me, without further ado, introduce Aaron Peterman. He is Senior Strategy Analyst at HorizonX. This is Boeing's venture capital arm. Prior to HorizonX, Aaron worked in strategic development and mergers and acquisition at Boeing, in venture capital at Verus International, and founded nawgin, a mobile game company where friends compete to find out who is more intelligent. Aaron holds a BS in finance and economics from the Trulaske College of Business and a certificate in strategy from Stanford University. So if I can ask Aaron to come up, please give him a big hand.
Thank you, Dave. Can everyone hear me okay? I got to thank Brendan as well for being if anyone's seen Saving Private Ryan, kind of the most, I guess, the climax of the movies, he talks about, there's a character named Upham, and he's kind of going to be his hand throughout the battle. Like, Upham, I need you to be in a giant spot throughout this thing. Brendan's going to be my Upham tonight, because we've got 3 videos. I promise they're all relatively short, about 2 minutes average in length, but they're all very cool and will be worth it. So instead of talking about some hypotheticals, I figured I'd rather just show you some of the things they're working on. So. Two to the right. Boom. Thanks. So I have to say, I guess just before I start off, it's really kind of a surreal moment for me to be here tonight. I grew up in Springfield, Illinois. I spent my childhood kind of coming up to Chicago for various things. My brother went to Northwestern University. If we have any Northwestern grads in the crowd. He played football there. He was on the Bears practice squad for a few years. So I've always kind of been up here in this childhood context, rooting on my brother. So to be here with you guys tonight, talking about HorizonX, working with New Space Chicago and MHub, it's kind of surreal for me. So thank you guys for having me. Before we get into the HorizonX part of things, I want to be, I guess, cognizant of the fact that not everyone's going to know what Boeing does and who we are. And so just real quick on our business, these are 2016 numbers, but you'll hear me refer to these kind of three pillars of our business as BCA, BDS, and BGS respectively. So BCA, most commonly known for the 737 for Fly Southwest. They have an all 737 fleet, 787 Dreamliner, 747, 777X, which is coming soon. BDS, most commonly known for fighter jets and weapons and rotorcraft and satellites. So F-15, F-A-18, P-8 Poseidon. You see the AH-64 Apache there, built in Philadelphia. And then BGS is the sustainment business that supports all of those platforms and some that are our platforms. What really drew me to Boeing was this kind of storied past of innovation and travel. Everything from the first international airmail flight in 1916 to my personal favorite aircraft up here in the top right, 747, first flight in 1969. Unfortunately, carried its last commercial passengers a few weeks ago. That was kind of sad for me. To be quite honest, the Blue Angels are a big reason that I work at Boeing. If anyone's seen the Blue Angels, that's kind of a very cool to the Dreamliner. And then what really gets me excited about the future of Boeing and working at HorizonX is kind of what's alluded to here in the second century. And I'm cutting you guys off a little bit. So the first video I want to show, Brendan, is kind of getting to where we see our business going in that second century and how HorizonX can play a role in that. So let's start with them.
There is a question as old as time, heard round the world and in every heart. It thrills the imagination and gives wings to possibility. Its footsteps fill history, and its hands hold destiny. It whispers in the dark, and its echo shakes the earth. The question called to those who came before, and they answered with the incredible. It urged them to start small and think infinite, to pursue possibilities and dream no small dream, to see a future filled with hope and unite to build something better. Working together, they connected continents, building the future of flight. They unlocked the stars. Leading their generation, they inspired ours. To dream high and fly far, to bind together and build the future. To lead our world and find new ones. To honor their legacy and leave our own. Founders heard the call, and their answer lives on. From ocean waves to the edge of space, through our first century and into the next, their memory remains. Now, it's our turn. question is calling louder than ever. What will we dream next?
I get paid $100 extra dollars if I show that video. So the natural question, I think, is, so that was Boeing. It was a lot about the history of Boeing, kind of where we've been, where we might go as a company. HorizonX is this new organization introduced officially to the public in May of 2017, so not even a year old yet. What is HorizonX's role in that next century of Boeing, and where are we investing? Where are we geographically? Why are we even doing that? So I hope to answer this why HorizonX question first. So first off, I think there are 6 things that are really driving a lot of the verticals that we're investing in, the way that we're thinking about where our market is going. It's really kind of an amazing time to be in aerospace and space and the defense world. So I want to touch on a couple of these very quickly. Electrification, if you're following the car industry, or if you follow the aerospace industry, this is really driving a lot of what we're investing in. I was talking to someone earlier about Zunum Aero. It's the first investment of HorizonX. Zunum Aero has a concept for a hybrid electric passenger airplane. So if you fly, like this morning, like I did, from St. Louis to Chicago, you might fly on an MD-80, a regional aircraft. Right now, that's kind of standard heavy fuel propulsion, jet fuel. Hybrid electric propulsion could be a complete game changer for sub-regional flight. It's going to be lower operational cost, much quieter, much more environmentally friendly. The lower operational cost can open up air travel to a whole segment of the world that's never been able to afford it before. So it's a huge game changer for both air travel in the United States, but also in countries like India and China. Maturation of autonomy. I'm going to talk a little bit about one of our portfolio companies called Near Earth Autonomy. It's a spin out of Carnegie Mellon. This is something, again, if you follow the car industry, it's very popular these days. Autonomous cars, autonomous everything. For us, it's kind of paramount to where our business is going. Today, most people probably know this, but when you're on a commercial aircraft flight, from the time you take off to the time you land, most of it is already automated. So there's a lot of problems that have been solved in that world already, but when you think about cargo transit for servicemen and women, right, there are helicopter pilots who are piloting these rotorcraft that's moving cargo into the battlefield into very dangerous situations. So if we can develop some sort of autonomy sensor suite to put on the front of some of the aircraft that's moving this cargo around, that could have the potential to save quite a few lives. Finally, an interesting one I thought when I first started with HorizonX was business model disruption. And so this is very much the Uber, Lyft, Airbnb effect of things. You're starting to see it a little bit in the private jet industry. The Uber private jets, companies like JetSmarter, or one here, even in the Chicago area called Fly Auto. There are a couple out there. And so that has the potential to really disrupt the way air travel is kind of bought and sold and experienced today. And we think about the different business models that we can apply throughout our business. That's a big role for HorizonX as well. I guess to take a more tongue-in-cheek approach about why HorizonX is here. Does anyone know who's popular for saying this? No. A little bit younger than Bill Boeing. Silicon Valley. Okay. Mark Zuckerberg. This is kind of his ethos for Facebook. So obviously, very successful entrepreneur in his own right. Something that I think he's had a large influence on the way Boeing thinks about innovation. Him and just kind of the Silicon Valley mantra itself and what he's done to change the culture there. So what about this one? If you are not embarrassed by your first version of your product, you've launched too late. Anyone know this one? Close.
Lieutenant Jobs.
He was a co-founder with Elon Musk. Actually,
Peter Thiel.
Reed Houghton. So you can kind of get a sense of the Silicon Valley ethos, right? It's move fast and break things. It's get your products out there early, get customers testing them, iterate quickly, quote unquote fail fast, right? So this has really had a huge effect on the way Boeing is doing business. I had a unique kind of insight into this because I started at Boeing in BDS, corporate strategy side, when SpaceX was trying and failing to launch their first rocket and landed back on that kind of drone ship, right? And so I had a unique exposure to senior leadership at BDS, kind of laughing at his attempts. Like, that's never going to happen. That's insane. How can someone land a rocket on a drone ship? Well, here we are today, and he's not only doing it, but repeatedly, and he's going bigger. And so that kind of woke us up to this kind of way of doing business. So let's put those guys up there for a second. Does anyone know the significance of this number? Any aerospace people? Close. So I first heard the term 10 to the minus ninth used a couple months ago when I was in HorizonX, and it was kind of used as shorthand for the safety culture at Boeing that is paramount to our business, that has made air travel the safest mode of transportation in the world. It's something that business travelers, families, servicemen and women rely on every day. Like I said, I flew up here from St. Louis today. When you get on an airplane, you don't even think about the risk of anything happening anymore. It's just kind of second nature. You learn to trust it. Reason being, the more formal definition, the FAA standard to certify an aircraft to operate in national airspace today is that the critical components of the systems have to have a 1 in a billion probability of failure. So safety is our business. And when you put these two kind of next to each other, this convergence of this fail-fast approach to innovation and this 10 to the minus 9 safety culture, that's kind of it's a tough place to be. There's a lot of challenges there, but we also feel that there are a lot of opportunities there. So that's kind of the world that we live in, is at the convergence of those two, I guess, kind of mindsets. So this is the corporate speak charter of HorizonX. It's to find opportunities that the Boeing core business would or could not pursue, but fall within the strategic scope of the Boeing company. And I'll show a few examples of that here in a little bit. So hopefully that answered the why in HorizonX. Does that make sense to everyone? This is more of kind of the how. And so HorizonX has 4 divisions within it. I am part of the new business Horizons team, so I'll start there. I didn't come up with a name. New Business Horizons is chartered with establishing non-traditional partnerships to go find new business opportunities or create new markets. So a good example of that is if Boeing were to team up with, this is not actually happening, so I hope there are no reporters in the room. If Boeing and Amazon were going to be partners to go do drone delivery, make that real, that's an example of a non-traditional partnership that we might do. That's a very New Business Horizons kind of thing. Disruptive Horizons is kind of turning that on its head. It's a group of primarily folks of engineering background chartered to disrupt Boeing's core business, hopefully before someone else does. So if HorizonX were here 15 years ago, hopefully they would have thought to launch a rocket and then land it so they could launch it again and cut the cost in half like SpaceX did to that. And then finally, HorizonX Ventures, that's kind of the most popular part of HorizonX. If you Google HorizonX, you're going to see HorizonX Ventures press releases where we are investing in startups, taking equity stakes in startup companies that fall within our strategic scope, which I'll get to in a little bit. So that's kind of the most outward-facing part of the group. And I work with them quite a bit as well, because a lot of times we will work with a startup that's raising money, and if we see a lot of value in that startup, if you guys have startups, this might be helpful for you to understand. We might at the same time close a Series A investment with a company and establish a joint development agreement with that company and help them commercialize some technology that they have at a certain point, if we see aerospace applicability for it. And then finally, strategy and operations. This is kind of the group that keeps the ship headed in the right direction. They provide support to the rest of the 3 groups. So if we're looking at an equity investment for a startup in commercial space, strategy and operations is going to do kind of your fundamental strategy analysis on the commercial space market, value chain analysis, capability gaps, control points, profit pools, all that stuff. That's what our strategy group does. So that was the how. This is kind of the where geographically. Boeing obviously is a global business. HorizonX not quite a year old, so we're still just operating in the U.S. Our largest footprint today is in St. Louis and Seattle. It's where the two largest geographic footprints for Boeing are. I'm currently based out of St. Louis. Excited that we're going to open soon an office up in Menlo Park, so I'll be moving out to the Silicon Valley area for that. So that'll be our third office space. And then separately, we've got some team members kind of scattered throughout the U.S. In the tech hubs in Boston, LA, Chicago, DC, and Austin, Texas. So this is kind of getting more into the where of where we're investing, both internally and externally. So I'll go through a few of these, but I'll show you, again, examples of videos, so I don't have to talk in hypotheticals. But you can see the kind of the line back to the disruptions, the macro trends that are driving some of the things that we're investing in here. I guess the top row, if I were going to weight these, would be much more heavily weighted than the other ones. Sorry, Dave, the space is on the bottom row. It is an emphasis of ours, but disruptive mobility, autonomy, advanced logistics, connectivity, these permeate throughout the entire Boeing product portfolio that I talked about earlier. So I'll show you an example that I think is cool that kind of hits on these top four. This is an internal prototype at HorizonX that was worked by the Disruptive Horizons group. So again, kind of these are areas that we're investing in internally and externally. So here's an example of a video. It's a video that shows an example of an internal prototype that we developed. The video will tell you more about it than I can. This was built in St. Louis, Missouri, by the way.
When I saw it take off, I was inspired by it. This team of Boeing engineers was able to do the impossible and deliver a prototype.
In a matter of 3 months, we took a concept from a piece of paper all the way to a flying vehicle.
So this is an octocopter. It's fully electric on some Boeing custom designed batteries. The goal is to grow into a large-scale cargo platforms. If you extend the range and you extend the payload a little bit, when you think about delivering 250 to 500 pounds over a 10 or 20 mile radius, you can change the way that the world connects. You can change the way that we deliver goods.
You've really got a convergence of technologies right now in terms of hybrid electric propulsion, vertical takeoff and landing, and autonomy that is going to unlock air travel in areas that we haven't seen it before.
So it becomes a test bed for future businesses, such as maybe electrically vertical takeoff cargo. This is my dream job of trying to come up with something new that the industry doesn't have yet. So it's exciting.
The company really is trying to change the future of the world. They are driving it on the leading edge and pushing the envelope, but doing it in a smart way.
Boeing is at the cutting edge of technology in aerospace. We have a chance here to really change air travel, and we'll look back on this day as a first step in that journey.
So the idea behind, so we're calling it the cargo air vehicle, and hopefully some of you are looking at that and saying, like, what's the big deal? That doesn't look that impressive. That was kind of what I thought the response was going to be when we put this video out there, but it was actually overwhelmingly positive, which is a good thing, I guess. But some of the things that aren't touched on in that video is that vehicle is lithium-ion powered. When we flew it for the first time, it broke the world record for the heaviest drone to be flown on full electric propulsion. Some of the customers that we talked to kind of initially, just some market engagement to get feedback from commercial customers, talk about this completely changing the way they do business. And I'll broadly talk about some of the people, some of those customers, just to give you a sense. I mean, it's the FedEx, the UPS, the Amazon, the Nike, Walmart, Target of the world. We're talking about how this could change the way they do business. And our team put that together in 92 days just to show kind of what the art of the possible could be. And then, I'll kind of harken back to the three-circle Venn diagram. So that was an internal prototype developed by Boeing that will be supplemented by startup companies that we're investing in for certain critical subcomponents, such as near-Earth autonomy that I alluded to earlier. In order to have this thing be autonomous, it needs to have an onboard sensor that, if you have a drone, you plan a GPS waypoint, right? You want it to go from here to there. What if something is in the way? It's a very real-world situation. If you want to have an autonomous cargo drone carrying 500 pounds of of something, it needs to be extremely safe. Again, kind of back to that 10 to the minus 9 culture. Near-Earth autonomy, in our opinion, is the leading edge of onboard detect and avoid capabilities, and they're going to be a huge piece of the continued development of that vehicle. Another example is an investment that we made recently that unfortunately isn't public yet. I would love to be able to break news here today, but I'd probably be fired. But it has to do with lithium-ion batteries. So we've been fortunate that the auto industry has kind of exploded with interest in electric drivetrains, and so that's helped to mature lithium-ion capability to a certain point, and now it's kind of on the aerospace industry to take it to the next level, or to find a better battery chemistry, or a different kind of approach to this clean way of propulsing some of our vehicles. And so the startup that we invested in, which hopefully will be public soon, is going to help us out quite a bit there. So let's talk about space a little bit. I'll try and talk about space a little bit. It's an amazing time for, I think, just space innovation in the world today. Commercial space in particular. And I was planning on saying that anyways, but I had the chance to talk to Dave and a few others this morning kind of about some of the things that were going on at New Space Chicago and other ventures here and there. And it's really an incredible time to be in commercial space. Just to give you guys an idea, 2017, $3.1 billion were invested into commercial space ventures. It's incredible. So that number's not up there, but it blows the other numbers out of the way. 2017, there were 51 government launches, 37 commercial space launches. Dave talked about the SpaceX Falcon Heavy static test yesterday. Rocket Lab, a company out of New Zealand, just 7 days ago, I think maybe less, had a first kind of even cheaper launch of some nanosats up in the LEO. That's just completely changed. It could completely change the way that we think about satellite constellations and the cost of launch and what that could enable if it's, I guess, if they continue to mature down a path where we can reliably launch things that cheaply. It's pretty incredible to think about. So this is I talked a little bit earlier about kind of how SpaceX has upended our business. So in case anyone, I guess you might not know, United Launch Alliance, ULA, is 50% owned by Boeing, 50% owned by Lockheed Martin. Historically, they had a monopoly on the US space launch business, which was historically dominated by government space launch projects. And then SpaceX came around. And so there was I guess rightfully so, the executives at Boeing Defense and the executives at ULA never really expected SpaceX to get to profitability or just to get the capability to the point where it is today, where it's reliable and in operation. And if you read, I think it's Elon Musk's book, or a book about SpaceX, I can't remember where I read this, but he was this close to failing. I mean, this close. He sold PayPal, invested all of his money into SpaceX and Tesla, and took out a loan to pay rent pretty much. I mean, it's incredible to think about the lengths they went to get launched to where it is today. And so this is a premium example of why HorizonX exists. There was, looking back on it, I guess hindsight's always 20/20, but an incredible amount of hubris at ULA that no one would ever disrupt that monopoly. And then here comes SpaceX, and so now here comes HorizonX to be able to hopefully invest in the next SpaceX and cultivate kind of this innovation in the aerospace and defense industry. So I'm just going to touch on innovation and launch of satellites, again, because my background is not a technical background. I grew up in the strategy group at BDS, focusing on the military aircraft side of the business. If you want to talk about fighter jets and rotorcraft and weapons, we can talk about that all day, but I think we'll talk about that later. So the big trends in the industry, it's driving down costs of launch with reuse and innovative ways to propulse the vehicles themselves. And satellites, these are kind of synergistic. It's miniaturization from CubeSats to nanosats, shoebox-sized satellites that are kind of dispensable, very low cost. The idea there is at a high level today, or historically, when you launch a satellite, the technology on satellites primarily that we use today is a decade or more old. Satellites were built in a very rigorous way, very hardened, very 10 to the minus 9th culture. But the pace of technology on the comm links that we use for GPS and communications and satellite internet and Wi-Fi and all those things, those are developing much more more quickly here on Earth than the satellites that are up in the sky. And so disposable nanosats that could potentially have be a constellation of satellites providing internet to parts of the world that don't currently have it, that could change the world. It's kind of incredible to think about. And so satellite miniaturization, satellite constellations, and then as a result of that, increasing demand for satellite services. So it's something that's really, it's become really interesting to us through some of the market engagement that we've been doing. Luckily enough, HorizonX was created, so we had a flexible vehicle put into place to go have some of these conversations with the innovative companies that are doing this, and then we can, harken back to the legacy, launch business at ULA, the satellite business at BDS, to help them accomplish that goal and create kind of a more innovative space industry as a whole. Increasing demand for satellite services, just to pull on that a little bit more. It's very popular today to talk about autonomous air taxis flying around. I don't know if anyone went to CES or if you pull up a TechCrunch article. It's autonomous cars, ride sharing, autonomous air taxis. Everything requires connectivity. The internet backbone of today could not support the type of connectivity that we require if all the cars out here today are driving autonomously and there are autonomous air taxis and everyone has kind of their own devices. So there's going to be a huge need for kind of this new approach, this low-cost approach to launch, innovation on the subcomponents that enable those satellite constellations to blanket the Earth with internet, kind of that internet backbone of the future that's going to be required. So when we look, into the horizon, some of these things are already happening today. Some of them are kind of crazy to think about, but again, so is launching a rocket and landing it back on Earth. Advanced satellite manufacturing, or just automating any sort of manufacturing process in aerospace and space. Reusable low-cost vehicles. Today it's SpaceX, but ULA is already working on approaches to this. Pretty much all the big players in the space industry have woken up to the fact that this is something that we need to be able to do. You saw the cost numbers back on the Falcon Heavy versus the Delta IV. The SpaceX launch today is less than 50% what ULA launch is. We're not even close to being competitive. It's kind of incredible. Global communications, we already talked about that a little bit. Real-time data analytics. It's amazing to me to think about kind of Google Maps, right? If you look at a picture of Google Maps from 2005 and you pull up your Google Maps today, the difference is incredible. And it's because of the data they've been collecting, both from Street View, but from their satellites, and the machine learning algorithms that they've been able to develop that fuse those disparate data sets into a product. One example is Google Maps that's useful for us today. And so if you just think about that idea, fast forward another 10 or 20 years, it's an insatiable demand for this data and the products that it can, the impact that it can have in our lives today in terms of climate change and urban planning and just a very high fidelity map of the world. It's kind of amazing to think about what we can do with that. Okay, so I'd like to maybe ask a question to the audience. Is there anything that maybe Dave or anyone else that's in the space industry thinking about where commercial space is going? These are trends that we view, and I don't, part of the purpose of HorizonX is not to say this is where we see the market going, so world, come line up and we'll invest in you if you agree with us. It's to say this is kind of our perspective on the market. Do you have a different perspective? Am I missing anything? Am I misrepresenting anything? Dave, is there anything you would add?
I'm having trouble seeing the slide from here, but my biggest question would be space resources.
Say again?
Space resources.
What do you mean by that?
Mining water from the moon or other metals from asteroids.
So that's a good point. So in my previous job, more of a traditional venture capital role, there's a company that was bioengineering leather, right? So they would take a cell of a cow, cultivated culture and then be able to create kind of authentic leather through this process that they had. And the value proposition behind this is that the human population is growing at a much faster pace than some of the natural resources on Earth can handle. So when we fast forward again, 50, 100, 200 years, and think about the natural resources that are required to sustain life on Earth, it gets to be kind of a scary picture unless we start to look at alternatives or use, a multiplanetary species or the ability to, like today's point, mine certain natural resources.
Yeah, Aaron, you asked the question. A couple of things that I would maybe comment on. On the advanced satellite manufacturing, what about on-orbit assembly of satellites? That's one question.
Thank you. On-orbit assembly of satellites, maybe at ISS or another unattended station, and then orbital debris mitigation is another one. That is, it's going to get to be a big problem in the near future. It already is. And there's probably a few others I can think of. One, the big one to me is low Earth orbit industrialization. There's a lot of things that you can do with the physics of low Earth orbit that you can do biological experimentation, you can do Z-Wire glass, for example. And I'm not saying that Boeing would get into all of these, but that has to be a kind of a long-term horizon, I think, for what's going to happen in low Earth orbit is the industrialization, commercialization, and manufacturing, research and development.
That's a good point. So just a few of those. The idea behind space debris deconfliction, right? The more satellites we put up, I talked earlier about nanosats, very low cost launch. The idea is to drive the cost down so we can put more things up, so we can get the data that can be turned into products that's valuable to us. Well, what if we put up too many things into space and they start running into each other and creating havoc in low Earth orbit, LEO? That's a serious problem that needs to be thought about in a meaningful way. And so another one, I guess, on the commercialization of LEO constellations. Today, Rich, correct me if I'm wrong, but satellites in low Earth orbit have a very narrow view for whatever they're trying to see or communicate, whether through a comm link or some kind of data collection service. MEO geosats have a much wider view, but are obviously much further from the Earth, and so the payloads it's much more expensive to get to GEO, MEO. There are a lot of trade-offs, but if you blanket LEO with a constellation that's communicating in like a mesh network kind of way, there's a lot of value to that, but it's a tough problem to figure out. It's one of those things that's, every 10 years there are startups that come along trying to do this sort of thing, and hopefully this time we can actually get it right. So I'll talk a little bit now about the venture-specific part of HorizonX. This is kind of the sexy part, the one that everyone knows about. We've invested in 10 companies to date, 6 of which are public. I'll talk a little bit about them on the next slide. So if there are startups here that fall within the aerospace and defense market or markets, we're actively investing. We're not even a year-old organization. We've made 10 investments. Our goal is to close 1 investment per month. Our check size is typically between $1 and $10 million. The average check size is $5 million. We recently had a review with our senior leadership, so senior leadership and Boeing senior leadership, looking back at 2017 and kind of planning towards 2018. And so the top of the Boeing company, you saw Greg Heislip, the CTO, Dennis Muhlenberg, CEO, Greg Smith, CFO of the Boeing company. Their feedback for HorizonX in 2018 was, awesome year, do more, do bigger. And so hopefully that can lead to the creation of new markets, inspiring people to start new innovative companies in some of these areas that we've talked about, problems that need to be solved. And that, in my opinion, when I think about HorizonX, that's really the unique role that we can play, is that we can inspire people and companies to go attack a hard problem because we have funding to help them do that. And we're open to those kind of non-traditional partnerships that we can leverage that long history of transport, innovation in air travel to help them do whatever it may be that they're doing. So our focus on stage of company is seed to Series C. I think of the 10 that we've done, 9 of them have either been a Series A or a Series B, so we're kind of falling within a sweet spot there. Seed stage, I'll kind of say in a transparent way, it typically has to be very strategic for the Boeing company to invest in a seed stage company where the management team has to be incredibly strong. Series C, we have been approached recently, now that we've kind of gotten our name out there a little bit, to participate in some Series C rounds, but the challenge is $10 million check doesn't get you into a lot of Series C rounds these days. And so I think that kind of goes along with the feedback from the senior leadership of the Boeing company to go do more, do bigger. Hopefully we can start writing some bigger checks in the future, so I'm really excited about that. Some of our partners, to give you guys a little bit of insight into the strategy when we co-invest. JetBlue Technology Ventures co-invested in Zunum Aero with us. So Zunum Aero, CTO was a professor at the University of Illinois, so he brought a ton of talent from Illinois to Zunum Aero in Washington State. JetBlue Ventures, our co-investing partner on that, flies an all Airbus fleet. Okay, so there's a little bit of a strategic angle to the way that we'll invest in Zunum to build a relationship with JetBlue, thinking back to kind of the cash cow of the Boeing company's business, commercial airplanes. There's very much an opportunity there for us. And I will say ecosystem partners is very much to the point of Dave and New Space Chicago. Something we've started doing more recently. We sponsored an incubator in India. I showed the slide earlier about where we are geographically. Boeing is a very global company. The idea is that we're able to make it possible to fly from here to Hong Kong, from here to London, from here to Madrid, making the world a smaller, more connected place. HorizonX should also be a very global entity and help incubate the startup ecosystem in London, and Tel Aviv, and Shenzhen, and Bangalore. So one of the first things that we did was to I guess, kind of kick off our international presence was to sponsor an incubator in India. And I think we're going to be doing the same again in Tel Aviv here pretty soon. And we'll be opening some office space internationally, I would say, in the later part of 2018. And so finally, this is the 6 public companies in our portfolio today. The companies aren't public, these are the ones that we've announced, that we've invested in. I talked about Zunum Aero a little bit already. Upskill's a very cool company. They're based out of Herndon, Virginia. They are a augmented reality middleware company that primarily uses Google Glass. Use cases kind of within their wheelhouse are manufacturing floor. So you can kind of guess what the investment thesis was there. Has anyone ever been to the Boeing factory tour in Everett, Washington? I've never been. What? I'm jealous of you guys. But it's I've heard it's incredible. It's the largest building by volume in the world. And it can develop rain clouds in the building, I've heard. So a huge focus in the Boeing company is driving out inefficiencies in our manufacturing process. Upskill has already demonstrated they can help us do that. And to give you guys an idea of how we invest, part of the deal thesis pre-writing check was introducing the Upskill leadership team to P&L leaders within the Boeing company to demonstrate their capability and brainstorm pilot projects that we could run, not for the sake of doing pilot projects, but to commercialize their technology and realize the value that they've developed at this R&D level and help them scale up to be in all of the manufacturing environments across the Boeing portfolio, which again is around the world. Smart Cognition, based out of Austin, Texas. They're an AI company, machine learning. I don't know much about AI, so I try to stay away from this topic. The thing about Smart Cognition that I can say is they specialize in unstructured data sets and training data sets, which I've heard is the actual hard part of AI. So we're excited to have them in our portfolio. There seems to be endless opportunities to apply their expertise throughout our company. I was talking to someone earlier about dual-use technology and making an investment in a company that kind of seems strange, especially given HorizonX charter. C360 is the perfect example of that. If you guys are sports fans, if you watch Fox Sports or the NHL, C360 has a pretty cool 6K camera used for over-the-top OTT broadcast live streaming. If you watched the Super Bowl last year, it'll be at the Super Bowl this year. I think it's one NHL game a week. They've got several Fox Sports partnerships. What they can do is 6K camera in football. It's on top of the goalpost, and it gives you 180 by 180 view of the field that can allow up to 5,000 users to individually pan, tilt, and zoom within that live stream. Pretty cool if you're a sports fan. Even cooler if you're SOCOM or the Air Force or the Marines, and you have several different video feeds out there in theater, as we say, kind of stitched together in some kind of command center way for various people who need to see this information. C360 can give you kind of one live video stream of a given operational environment and stream that to various parts of decision makers and leaders in the government that are interested in seeing what's going on in theater, and they can have their individual pan, tilt, zoom of that operating environment. And it's a $50,000 camera, C360. So it's a huge game changer for the way we do intelligence, reconnaissance, surveillance missions in theater. Near Earth Autonomy, I alluded to these guys a little bit earlier. They're spin out of Carnegie Mellon, 5-year-old company. Sanjeev Singh, CEO of Near Earth Autonomy, was on the team that developed the first driving car back in the early 90s, and came in second place at the DARPA Grand Challenge. To the team led by Sebastian Thrun, came in first place as the founder of Udacity, a very popular Silicon Valley figure if you follow the Silicon Valley ecosystem. Sanjeev and his team on the ACUS program for ONR, Office of Naval Research, demonstrated the first GPS-denied autonomous cargo mission a couple weeks ago in their final pilot demo for ONR. This was a Huey, which is kind of your standard military helicopter with a near-Earth autonomy sensor payload in the front. It was given a mission to fly from here to there, a couple miles. There are obstacles in the way. There's something in the landing zone that it was supposed to land at. No GPS allowed. It goes around the obstacles. It assesses the landing zone, sees that it can't land there, lands right next to it. When you watch it, it's really not that exciting because it's working. That's part of the value of their company. If you think about what I talked about earlier with our product portfolio, the cargo air vehicle, drone delivery, drone inspection, really autonomous flying, anything, they're going to be an extremely valuable company in our opinion. And the really cool thing about them is they were a 5-year-old Series A, which is incredible to think about. I don't think I've ever seen that. We were their first outside money in. So they were profitable, self-sustaining for 5 years. Kind of this R&D powerhouse for DARPA and ONR and kind of the government research labs. And here comes the commercial UAV world and all this interest in self-driving cars and autonomous air taxis and things like that. They're going to be really important in enabling that whole world. So hopefully we can help them develop their technology to a point where it's commercialized, productized, and able to bring some of those things to life. Actually, to that point, that's my last video, is I'm going to show kind of what Near Earth can do. Well, there's any sound on this one. And to give, I don't know if anyone wants to just on Amazon search GPS jammer, but I'm told they're like less than $100. So this is why GPS denied ability is extremely important when we're talking about drones flying around in a basic way. So the cool thing about the NEA videos is they're going to show you the path that it's supposed to fly on, and then they're going to put something in the way, and it will show the UAV actually making decisions to avoid the obstacle. really not that exciting, right? Because it just kind of works. It's kind of what we love about it. So hopefully you guys are getting a sense of the core capabilities shown there, the cargo air vehicle that we're prototyping, Boeing's kind of core business and product portfolio, the world that could open up with autonomous travel, ground and air, the key subcomponents that are going to be required for that, and the importance of venture capital in a company like Boeing or in the aerospace industry, or just the open-mindedness, I guess, to say they did that better than us. Because quite frankly, this is an area that Boeing had been investing in for a long time. We discovered near Earth, and they blew us out of the water. So that's kind of the notion behind why HorizonX is here, in addition to SpaceX completely disrupting our entire launch business. The last one is Gamma Alloys. This is the company I actually don't know much about because they're relatively new in our portfolio, but it's a novel metal alloy IP that they have that Boeing makes a lot of things that needs lighter, stronger metals. And I guess if I could just wrap up by a little bit, if I haven't sold you guys enough already on how cool Boeing and HorizonX are, I just want to kind of leave with this notion that we really believe in these two things, the power of partnership and the value of a strategic long-term investor. And hopefully that's going to be shown this year when we have the opportunity to reinvest in some of those portfolio companies that I showed earlier as they raise their Series B and Series C rounds. And just the expertise that we're able to bring, thinking back to that slide that I showed earlier, 100 years of aerospace experience, hundreds of technical fellows, high CapEx flight test facilities, and wind tunnels, and supercomputers, and things like that. It's capabilities that startup companies in the hardware space, like we're seeing here at MHub, need desperately to solve hard problems, but don't have the funding to go use those. And so that's kind of what we hope to bring to bear with HorizonX. Thank you guys very much for coming.
So we're going to open it up for questions. If you do have questions, we do have a mic up there, and I'm also wandering around as well. So if you have any questions for Aaron, please jump on up or raise your hand, and I'll come over to you.
Is this presentation going to be emailed to us, or will we have to contact the website for more information?
I can email parts of it. So find me afterwards. I'll get your email and send it to you.
Aaron, this is loud. I noticed on one of your slides it said that you were even investing in what could potentially disrupt Boeing's own business models. And I'm wondering, how much is that fraught with, I understand it's fraught with danger for Boeing, but how much do they really want to take something like that? Or is it possible that they like to look at things, and in the past, companies that have done that just kind of shelved it, so they didn't disrupt their normal business model? Are you really serious about taking those disruptive technologies forward that much?
It's a good question. I'll answer with a bit of a story, and then I'll answer more directly. So Spark Cognition, I talked about earlier, an AI company based out of Austin, Texas. One of the things we did with them after we closed our investment was brought in about 100 senior leaders of the Boeing company for this kind of workshop to, here's Spark Cognition, this is why they're awesome, this is what we can do together. One of the VPs from Boeing goes into the CEO of Spark's office after one of his presentations and says, hey, I heard you're working on such and such. I need you to stop that right now. That's my business. Steve Nordland, head of HorizonX, told me that story with a smile on his face, as if that's our goal as an organization, is to kind of stir up some of those antibodies, as he says, within the core business, because that's exactly what needs to happen at a 100-year-old company like Boeing, who needs to stay on the cutting edge of aerospace and space innovation. So that's a Spark Cognition story for you, but our goal is definitely not to acquire, develop IP, and then put it on the shelf so no one else can have it. It's very much to bring those things to bear and to change the way that we travel around the world and communicate with each other today. Yeah, there you go. I'll repeat it.
You mentioned that the whole idea of industry disruptors is why you're creating this adventure. At first I was going to ask if a lot of other companies were doing this similar to like volume companies. Then I saw Silvertake over there. Is this like a trend now with oil industry as well? Or that you're guys are trying to develop technologies that will advance you?
Yes, and so, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to answer it though, because I don't have a ton of exposure to the oil and gas industry. Again, it's my expertise, if you want to call it that, but it's not expertise. It's in the aerospace and defense industry. But I guess it's important to note that within Boeing, on the BDS side, there's PhantomWorks, which is responsible for innovation within BDS. You guys have probably heard of SkunkWorks. That's a little bit more catchy. PhantomWorks is our version of that. Within BCA, there's advanced concepts. They're developing kind of concepts for the future of commercial travel. HorizonX does not own innovation of the Boeing company. We're just doing it in kind of this flexible way. Oil and gas companies, we've talked to a few of them, Schlumberger, ExxonMobil, there's a couple other ones that I can't think of right now, but they have kind of these core business innovation units that we typically interact with, and my perception so far, based on those interactions, is that the senior leadership of those companies is happy with what they're seeing out of that approach to innovation, whereas we aren't. That's why HorizonX is here.
So, maybe this is a basic question about moving on like space. So, when it comes to space travel for the general public, right? So you've got this consumer space travel championed by SpaceX, Virgin, etc. There's two sides to it, right? There's the side where you make a craft that takes people to space, and there's the side where you're taking people to space and selling that experience. Are either sides of those interesting to Boeing? And if so, which or both?
So for space tourism kind of thing?
Sure, yeah. Is that the industry term for it?
Maybe. I won't say officially. What was amazing to me in seeing kind of how ULA is talking about where their business is going, so United Launch Alliance, ULA, again, kind of had this monopoly on the launch industry in the U.S., which was the majority of their business made up by government customers. And a lot of people assume, I feel like that's kind of going to continue to be the majority of their business. But again, with kind of SpaceX coming onto the scene, the CEO of ULA is talking quite a bit about the importance of commercial space launch and what that can mean for their business. And so I think when the context that he uses for commercial space launch is customers like your AT&Ts, Verizons, DirecTVs of the world, I don't think we're quite into the space tourism part of the market yet, but that's again kind of one of the areas that HorizonX would probably be responsible for. And we don't have any of those companies in our portfolio right now or in our pipeline. So if you're thinking of starting, you know where we're going. Is there another question here?
In having a portfolio of companies that do similar things, how does cross-pollination work? So you have two companies that you invested that both have to do with drone technology. Are they able to have access to each other's technology as they develop their products? And how is Boeing is able to facilitate that? Can you talk about the mechanisms a little more?
Yeah, so a big part of what enables autonomous flight is the ability to train the algorithms behind the sensors. And so LiDAR is the huge sensor that is used for UAVs. And the collision avoidance video that we saw earlier on the AEGIS program that the Earth was on with the unmanned Huey, that was LiDAR, sonar, and imagery data fused into one to help localize the vehicle and help it operate within a congested environment. Spark Cognition is going to be much better at training those data sets than near Earth. And so that's actually on my to-do list next week, is to facilitate that introduction. And the important thing that we always have to keep in mind when we invest in a company is that we don't own them. A lot of Boeing executives want to go and tell them near Earth or Spark Cognition or upskill, like, this is what you'll do, this is what you'll invest in, I need you to do this, I need you to do that. HorizonX, a big part of our role is to remind core business, like, we don't own these guys, they can do what they want. And so that's to say, we kind of tee up the introduction, and we'll have some pilot projects in mind, some use cases and things like that. And if there's interest on both sides, and there's value that we can bring to it, we'll kind of form a working team around that. Or if there's something that's just those two would benefit from working together, we'll kind of let them go and do their thing. So we very much try to facilitate those kind of things where we can see value in those introductions. Yeah, exactly. So I think the hope is that through cultivation of a deal, due diligence, and negotiating, and then starting on some pilot projects that we had in mind when we found a company, we build up some goodwill, and that some of our ideas are pretty good, and they start to trust us through that process. And so culture fit and trust and rapport with the leadership team is a huge piece of this whole puzzle. And if we kind of say, hey, Sanjeev, you should really meet Amir from Spark, he's probably going to, hopefully believe us and make it a priority. Yeah, so the question was about startup IP and how we integrate that into the core business portfolio. That was a big concern for Near Earth when we were negotiating that deal. It's the value of their company is their IP portfolio. So the way that we were able to kind of sell that internally, because again, Boeing is, we're investing in a technology company, we want to at least co-own the IP or figure out some way to get their IP. But the idea is we own 10 to 20% of that company, so their upside is our upside. And Near Earth, they would not have ever let us invest in them had they not had full control over their IP. So that's kind of how we did the deal. The way that we will integrate them, their core IP onto a project, is kind of on an ad hoc basis, but again, there's no transfer of IP ownership for any of that, because we want that company to grow in value. Their IP portfolio is their company value.
Hi, Aaron. Sorry. Hi, Aaron. Hugh Jetbold. So I have a question for you about the value of being able to move with the speed and the lower cost of a startup. You were just talking about how they're able to do that faster than you can at Boeing, and this is generally true. We find the same thing. So have you looked at models where you might be able to somehow commission startups or entrepreneurs to take ideas that you have at Boeing and make them go faster than even your HorizonX group can go?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks you for the question, actually, because a couple of points I wanted to make earlier that I forgot to. There's definitely a speed element to it and definitely a cost element to it. Boeing, when you buy anything from Boeing, it's going to be extremely hardened, extremely redundant. It's going to be Cadillac, so to speak. That's kind of how ULA is. Very reliable, very expensive. That's what Boeing is. There's a lot of benefit in kind of letting us, in pursuit of a commercial opportunity, like some of the companies I mentioned earlier, or even on the defense side, letting the startup lead and Boeing be a subcontractor on a given proposal. We've done that a few times, where Near Earth has been the lead and Boeing was a sub. So that way, they can move at their pace, and it's kind of a forcing function for us. And in fact, there was one recently, I don't remember the exact government program, but Boeing bid with Near Earth as a sub, and Near Earth bid with Boeing as a sub, and Near Earth won. So that's just one example, but yeah, definitely.
Excuse me, for emerging markets that are trying to build sort of a, competency
competency in the space industry or even some of the other sectors that you invest in. How are you doing market sensing for like, you know, the earlier stage startups, kind of who's out there and what are they doing? What are some of the things that you're doing for sensing? And then have you seen any trends or just interesting anecdotes even of adjacent, you know, people coming from adjacent or different industries applying their innovations or adapting them into some of the things that you invest in?
Yeah, so C360 for the latter, for the second question, I think a great example of that. It's a really awesome camera at a commercial cost applied in the sports and entertainment world. Extremely valuable on a UAV and intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance kind of mission. That's kind of the dual use kind of technology that we're looking for. So that's an example of that. For sourcing, it's helpful that Boeing has 150,000 employees and we're spread across the world, and so there are technical fellows and people that are experts in their field that have access to government researchers and startup companies that are being spun out of MIT and Stanford and Carnegie Mellon, and give us a heads up, like, hey, you should meet this guy. Also, a big part of it is events like this. You never really know where an opportunity is going to come from, or an idea that someone might have, or a company that has 2 employees and an idea, and a need that we can fill, that kind of thing. So New Business Horizons, the team that I'm on, does a lot of sourcing, a lot of traveling, a lot of engaging with startups, a lot of emailing and kind of spreading the word about HorizonX. And again, kind of back to the rapport built with our portfolio companies through the process. A lot of these guys, like Sanjeev is a great example from Near Earth. Near Earth is not really a LiDAR company. They're a sensor payload company that will fuse various different sensors using their algorithms to enable autonomous flight. And so he's very close with the LiDAR startup companies, and even people at Carnegie Mellon across the world who are thinking about novel approaches to LiDAR that can drive costs down. So he'll give us a heads up. This is a really cool company, really that kind of thing. So we rely on partnerships informally for that kind of thing.
In your investment portfolio, do you have certain percentage for emerging market, like for example, Chinese startup companies?
Definitely. So actually, I don't remember if it was Dave or Steve asked the question earlier. Have you guys invested in a Chicago company yet? Or like, what's the deal? The global headquarters for Boeing is in Chicago. Why is there not a bigger footprint here? So my answer to that was Boeing is a global company, and the goal for this year is to have our first 2 international investments. I think our focus markets are going to be India, China, and Israel, and the UK. Not to say that opportunity might not come from somewhere else, but so definitely hoping to make our first 2 international investments and hire our first international employee. And again, kind of some of those same tech hub markets, Shenzhen, Bangalore, Tel Aviv, whatever it was.
And so for the international deals, are you open for all the areas? Like you mentioned in one of your slides, you have the area you're going to focus to invest. So is all the area open to the international deal as well?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Actually, the slide that I was going to ask you about just popped up. So my question is about advanced logistics and what your vision for HorizonX looks like, or if you have a concept for what you are going to make that look like.
So depending on the person you ask at HorizonX, you might get a different answer on their perception of advanced logistics. But the way that I think about it is the supply chain network that's built up around the world today is built up for a reason. There are large hubs, hub and spoke model. Any major cargo that comes to the U.S. comes through Long Beach or LA. It's a huge hub, it's a huge choke point for the way goods move kind of through our supply chain network. And the industry is kind of reacting in a way to build bigger planes and bigger hubs and ISO containers that are standardized and bigger container ships for economies of scale. But consumer trends are going exactly the opposite. When I order something on Amazon, I want to get it in 2 days, and I have the ability to do that for free, so I'm ordering smaller packages more frequently. That goes complete contrast to the way kind of this backbone of the supply chain works. So the cargo air vehicle, again, this is kind of a leap, and you know, assuming the impact that it could have on the market, but the idea is to kind of inspire people to think about a more point-to-point distributed network for moving goods through the supply chain network. And so it's not major hubs and huge things and choke points and costly delays. It's a continuous slow throughput kind of throughout the system from raw materials to the end user. And a big enabler for that, we think, is going to be electric propulsion and autonomous flight or autonomous ground vehicles. Those are really great questions. Any last questions? Well, thank you guys again so much. Oh, sorry, one more.
What is your guys' interest in cybersecurity? I see it listed there.
Yeah, this is a good question. This is not my area of expertise, but I'll give an example. Boeing acquired a company in the early 2000s called Secure Computing Solutions, SCS, based out of Pleasanton, California. It's an anti-tamper computer chip. So they'll take a commercial off-the-shelf chip and do some stuff to it, and it becomes an anti-tamper chip. The reason we bought that company was for the F-15 program. There's a capability need, and this company was about to go bankrupt, so we needed to buy them in order to continue the F-15 line, which is a cash cow for our business. But fast forward to today, cloud computing, distributed computing networks, just a greater thirst for that storage and distributed computing also comes with a greater risk of hacking and just bad actors. So the capability that SCS brings is going to be increasingly important there, but also there are all kinds of capability gaps and things that we're going to need to develop or incubate that I can't even really speak to. But hopefully this model gives us the flexibility to explore some of those and be open to some of the solutions. Awesome. Thank you guys again. This is really awesome.